Graduation is upon us, and graduates, we are so proud of your hard work, and we with you, we are sad that you won't get to maybe participate in graduation ceremonies like you had hoped to and expected to. Graduation is an important milestone. It's your chance to dress up in a gown that is always about 3 sizes too large for you. It's your chance to wear this flat hat that you try to balance on your head. Why that ever caught on, I'm not sure. Why we continue to do that, I'm not even sure of that. They're so uncomfortable. But you get to miss the chance to have that experience, and you get to miss the chance to sit for a couple of hours in an overcrowded, under air-conditioned gymnasium by 2 other sweating people that you have very little in common with, perhaps, except that you have the same first letter of your last name. You are missing out on the delightful experience of hearing the reading of the names of every single one of your classmates and watching them walk across the platform without tripping over their gown while balancing what's supposed to be a hat on their head. And all the time watching them considering yourself the moment that you will have to shine or fall on your face that you hope would soon come, 30 minutes, half an hour, hour and a half perhaps. You're missing all of that. And you know, I make light of it, but it is a milestone. And we do grieve with you. We wish you could experience what most of the rest of us have had to endure. We do. But just for the record, my high school graduation ceremony ended up being at home as well. So you aren't alone. You will get through this. But one of the things that seems to always surround high school graduations are sayings that go something like this. You can do anything you want to do. Go and reach your goals. Live your dreams. Reach for the stars. Make it big. Believe in yourself. If your mind can conceive it, you can achieve it. While pretty cliche, many of us have been inspired by these quotes. Maybe we've been inspired to work a little harder or to go a little farther, or maybe just to stay in bed dreaming a little longer. James Truslow Adams coined the term American Dream in 1931, and he remarked that life should be better and richer and fuller for everyone, with opportunity for each according to ability or achievement. And he said this should be in regard or regardless of social class or circumstances of birth. You can do anything you want to do. Go reach your goals. And it sounds great. And then something like a pandemic hits. I heard a story this last week of a 67-year-old Chicago man, Tuan Nguyen, who immigrated from Vietnam and began a restaurant in Chicago. For 14 years, he lived the American dream, forming this restaurant and making a life for himself. But because of this pandemic, he was forced to close the doors of his little Vietnamese restaurant for good. There are many like him, whether it's maybe it's a business, maybe it's not a business, maybe it's just plans that were derailed because of these times. The nation's economy is struggling right now. The rest of the world is still reeling in the quake of this virus. I heard this last week that one Nazarene district in Peru has already seen 22 deaths within the Church of the Nazarene because of the COVID-19. We have pastors who are on respirators even now. These thoughts: live your dreams, reach for the stars, make it big. Those words seem to fall pretty flat right now. Many are just thankful for work. Others are thankful for food or thankful for their measure of health. We've been asking in this season if there are things that these unprecedented times might supposed to be teaching us, if there are things that God might want us to learn, something of a new normal. And one of the most powerful lessons I believe that we are learning in these days is this matter of control. Leaders of every nation have gone to war with this microscopic bug. Nations have enlisted every citizen in this war with them. But the monster seems to just continue to get larger and larger. And the American reality is that I am not in control of my destiny. I'm not in control of everything. Maybe that I can't do everything I want to do. Maybe believing in yourself hasn't had the results you had expected. Maybe we control a lot less than we thought. As you might expect, the Bible has something to say on this subject. Let's look together at James chapter 4, beginning at verse 13. Now listen, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business and make money. Why, you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast in your arrogant schemes. All such boasting is evil. If anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is sin for them. I see a progression in this passage. It's perhaps a natural progression that we see in a lot of life. It begins with my will. This is what I want. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do A, B, and C so that I can get X, Y, and Z. Some of you will remember that we began this year, back in January 2020, we were talking about how we can maybe refocus for 2020 to really have a more perfected focus, maybe a 2020 vision for what God would want for us in this year. Well, I got to tell you, no one saw this coming. We talked in those first days of 2020 about what was coming, but no one saw this. I wonder if any of you have made New Year's resolutions back then. We are about halfway into the year. Maybe it's time to re-examine some of that. How are you doing on that? Last month I heard John Acuff talking about this, and he said, can you imagine trying to explain what's going on right now to the January version of yourself? He said, imagine you had a time machine and you could go back to a few months ago to those times when you were writing those resolutions, and imagine yourself going to yourself, looking over those resolutions. He says, maybe you look at that and say, well, you've written down, I want to travel more. Normally that would be a good resolution, but I'm just going to go ahead and cross that one off. Probably not the best resolution for 2020. Okay, let me think through this one. He says, you want to date your spouse more often, he says. He says, let me change that a little bit. Let me change that to say, try not to fight over an iPhone charger because you're both sitting on the same couch, co-working because you have to work from home now. He says, you're not going to understand all of that. but things are going to be different. You say that you want to visit your nephew's graduation. Let's change that. Let's change that to, how about you Zoom into your nephew's kitchen so that you can see him graduate next to the fridge. Things are different. We never would have seen any of these kinds of things come. We understand James' point better than ever. Today or tomorrow we will go and we'll do this and that in that city. We'll spend a year there, carry on business, make money. All of that is what we would call my will. You know, and your will may not be all that bad. You may will some good things. It may not be bad, but it's just not best because your will is imperfect. Today or tomorrow, we will do this or that. But James asks, will you? Will you really? Why, you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. He says, we make plans for tomorrow, for next year. We can set goals for us personally or professionally. So that's what you're going to do? That's what your plans are? Will you really? He says, you don't know that. You don't even know what is going to happen tomorrow. And that's the truth. And this pandemic has helped us realize that truth. If I would have known the stock market would do what it did, let me tell you, I would have sold everything on February 20th, and I would have bought it all back on March 20th. And I would have been doing pretty well right now. As it is, I didn't see it coming. And really, what eternal good would it have done me anyway? Jesus told a parable of a rich man who accumulated all kinds of wealth, so much that he had to build bigger barns to contain it all. And then after getting it all settled, he made these plans. He says, I'm just going to eat, I'm going to drink, I'm going to live it up. And the parable that Jesus tells says that the man had no idea that very night that he spoke those plans, that he would die. This is what I'm going to do. Will you? James says, a morning fog is a metaphor of your life. It's nothing more than a mist. It's a vapor. You can't with any certainty know much of anything about tomorrow. But this truth is not only helpful to remind us of the brevity of life, but the importance of life's moments. You aren't guaranteed tomorrow, so make these moments count. This is the way to get the most fulfillment out of life with the least amount of regret. But I tell you, you need to be careful here because a lot of people have said, well, I'm going to make each moment count, and they've run off a cliff in trying to do so. See, that happens when we think that we're in control. That happens when we think that we can do whatever we want to do and live it up, forgetting that we aren't in control. You can't even guarantee tomorrow. So if you want to find fulfillment and avoid regret, much more important than your will is God's will. Rather than my plans being all about my will, verse 15 says, instead you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. Now we try so hard to protect life. And it's good to value life, whether that be our own life or the lives of others. But James says the Lord's will trumps even our life. If it's the Lord's will, we'll live. You know, we have people who are risking their own lives to follow God's will even now, to help people who need help physically. Jesus gave his own life, demonstrating that the Father's will was more important than my will and my plans. This perspective is a perspective that I think many of us miss. How often do we make plans with no regard to God's will? How often do we hold back something from God today because we're hoping for security tomorrow? How often have we resisted submitting our lives to His Lordship because we are afraid of what others might say tomorrow? We resist giving what the Lord has asked us to give because we might need it tomorrow. We hold on to my will instead of God's will because of tomorrow. And James says that's trouble because it's a false sense of security. I love how Barbara Brown Taylor has said this, and this quote has gotten a lot of mileage in these days. She said, "We don't lose control of our lives. What we lose is the illusion that we were ever in control in the first place." James says that attitude is boastful. It's arrogance. But those aren't the only words that he uses to describe this faulty thinking. It's not just a bad idea. He's not just advising against it. It's bigger than that, more weighty than that. All such boasting, he says, is evil. I think evil belongs in the devil's name, right? Evil, making plans according to my will without considering God's will is evil. Might that be pretty harsh? Peter Davids explains it this way: "It is evil, for it robs God of his rightful honor as sovereign, and exalts a mere human as if he or she were God." Well, that's a problem. That kind of arrogance was humanity's first sin, wasn't it? It was that kind of arrogance and boastfulness that makes Satan evil. And if you think about it, it's that kind of arrogance that is at the root of every sin. In fact, James then gives a clear definition of sin. He says it this way: "If anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is sin for them." The belief that you can do anything that you want to do is humanistic. It's not godly. It's saying that humans have all power, not that God has all power. The idea, if your mind can conceive it, you can achieve it, can work really well if your mind is centered on Christ. But if it's not, it's just the sin of Babel. If you remember that story, the Tower of Babel. Look at what we can achieve without God. You need not believe in yourself. What you really need to do is believe in God and let Him be the Lord of your life, because you were never in control anyway. It's just an illusion. You have your will. I have mine. You have it all planned out, perhaps, what you will do, what you hope to do, but will you? Maybe, or maybe not. You don't have control over tomorrow. Instead, you ought to say, if it's the Lord's will, we will live and do this and that. So the question that we're left with is, will you? It's the one thing that we can control. Will we trust Him? Will we follow God? You can make your best guess about tomorrow. You could hope that if there is a God, that you are God. But that's a pretty arrogant and dangerous gamble. Or you could let God in. Or you could let God back in if you have pushed Him away. Let Him have His way in your life. If this virus has taught us anything, perhaps it's that we hold less power than we thought we had. But our realization that we lack control is not a reason for doing nothing or failing to plan at all. Understand that. Rather, this understanding offers good reason to trust the one who is sovereign. It offers us a good reason, an opportunity to realize that we can and that we need to fully depend on Him to guide us every day and into our tomorrows. It gives us reason. Even when our plans, the best laid plans, don't turn out, even if we're trying to trust Him and we think we're going the right direction and it doesn't turn out, even then, it should, in humility and obedience, cause us to admit we were never in control anyway. We still aren't in control. And trust continues. I don't know where you are today. I don't know where you are on this trust continuum. I don't know if you are trusting God with everything that you have today, or if you've never put your trust in Him. Perhaps you are questioning God right now. Perhaps you are kind of seeking Him out. Maybe you're saying, God, do you have what I need? I tell you what, you are out of control right now, and you always have been. The best thing that you can do right now is submit your trust to the Lord. Jesus, I just want to pray for each one who is listening right now. Whether they are listening through Facebook Live or recorded, or YouTube, or through the conference call. Lord, I just pray right now that you would speak into our hearts and into our lives, that you would remind us of this truth once again, that it's only an illusion of control if we feel we have any control at all. God, that you would help us resist that temptation of trying to arrogantly and dangerously set our plan without any regard for your plans. God, I pray for that one who's in a situation right now and just needs to know that they can trust you. Would you help them right now? I pray for that one who has maybe pushed you out or never has let you in. I pray that today would be that day that you come into a life and you set up your throne, your lordship in a life. May our will always submit to yours. We give you thanks, Lord, for your power at work within us. Give you thanks for your saving grace and your sustaining grace. And it's in your great name, Jesus, we pray. Amen. If you have made a commitment today, or if you need prayer today, I hope that you will reach out to us. You can personal message me right through this page, or contact me if you have my information. I would love to be in contact with you. Receive the benediction today. May the God whose will is perfect your will as you follow Him. May you know that He who holds tomorrow holds you in His hands. And may He give you peace and a longing for everything good, for doing His will tomorrow and forever. Amen. Lord's blessing be yours.